Started. All right. We're about to ready to get started here with Shaphat Outreach Podcast, Slow Motion with Bishop Bowser. And so we thank all of you that are going to be coming in viewing. I know you're not in here right now, but I need to, let me see if can I share this?
Thank you.
Let's see here. How do I share this? Let's see here. Kara, do you have set up where we can share this? Bear with us a little few seconds. Let's see here. I don't know what's going on here. All right. All right. So now let's see here. Let me go over here. There we go. Try to start this watch party.
Yeah, I'm gonna need you to teach me about that too. I'm trying to get the watch party going.
Oh, for real? Pretty easy. Y'all, man, you guys are the millennials. Are you a millennial?
I'm on the cusp. But I was saying that our IT person, she was like, "Oh yeah, I don't know how to do it yet." I said, "Well, I asked my pops. He knows how to do all that stuff before we do."
Amen. So let's see here. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. As hopefully folks will come on in and start viewing and watching us. But I'm going to go ahead and get the podcast started. All right. Hey, everybody. This is Bishop Bowser, and this is Shaphat Outreach Podcast, Slow Motion with Bishop Bowser. And so today we thank you all for viewing us and tuning in today, because we have a pretty good show today. I believe we're going to have, which we're going to be talking about, community violence, right? Community violence. We're going to talk about credible messengers and what that's all about. And we're also going to talk about ending the cycle of violence, right? Because that's what we're really all about, is ending the cycle of violence. And today I have a very special guest with me who has, since we've been doing this work with Cass and now with Shaphat Outreach, and I still do work with Cass. We kind of try to put things back together on that. But with the violence intervention, gang intervention work, my son, Jay Bowser here, has been working with me right from the beginning of doing all this work, and really had it help to make an impact in the city of San Diego, and dealing with the violence and talking with the youngsters in the community on the street to curtail the violence. And so I want to talk about this today, because one of the problems that we have today is we have we have the bodies, we have the people that can get out there and get the work, we have the knowledge, we have the expertise, we have everything, but we don't have the resources, right? And that's the way they always stranglehold the black community, right, and communities of color. But I just want to say black community, because that's what we focus on today, is dealing with that violence that takes place in our communities that we need to tackle and deal with. There's only so much we can do with the resources that we have. And these politicians, they not all of them, because I most definitely got to give a shout out to Councilmember Monica Montgomery, because she's on it and she's trying to do the best she can with the limited resources that she has. Because technically speaking, when it comes to addressing issues like community violence in our communities, it's really not the way San Diego City and County is set up. It's really not set up for the city to specifically address that. They don't have the taxes, the resources, or the funding to come in for that, but the county does. And that's why everybody deals with the county, because the county is responsible for that. But they're not directing those resources correctly, right? And I'm getting tired. Well, I shouldn't say I'm getting tired, because we most definitely need to hear about COVID-19, and we need to continue to have that conversation. But Council Member Nathan Fletcher, Supervisor Nathan Fletcher, you see him on TV every day, almost every day on Twitter. I see him talking about COVID-19. But he needs to show some concern about our community, because while COVID-19 is killing us. Also, community violence is still killing us, and violence did not slow down during this pandemic. And we need to address that, and we need to give resources to our community. Don't be throwing us a few dollars and a few peanuts and think that we're supposed to be happy. And I'm really kind of my son Jay, you know, he can speak for himself and paving great futures, but all those folks that aligned with County Board of Supervisor Nathan Fletcher, whenever it was a couple months ago on this bill, not a bill, but some bogus law or what was that they were trying to pass?
I don't know if it was an initiative
that they're trying to pass or whatever, didn't even touch on police violence, right? Let alone dig deeper and start dealing with the issues that's really going on in our community. So let me, before we get into this conversation, I just want to give you some background of what we're looking at, what we're talking about, because, you know, we are the experts, right? We're not going to bow down and back down from any of that. When it comes to this community violence, when it comes to addressing these issues, we are the experts. We're the ones that you need to come. When I say we, I'm not just talking about me and my son, but I'm talking about all those that are doing incredible messenger work in the streets, not just mentoring or prison reentry. That's a part of it. But what we're talking about is boots on the ground and out there really trying to curtail the violence that's taking place in the community. And there's not a whole lot of people that's doing that, right? So when you look at violence, violence is responsible for 5% of deaths among white men and boys aged 15 to 24 in California. But 26% of deaths among Hispanic men and boys the same age, just under 50% of all deaths among black men and boys in the same age group. So blacks are 50% of the deaths, right, is tied to violence in California, right? More than 92% of gun violence or gun homicide victims are killed before the age of 18. Let me say that again. More than 92% of gun homicide victims killed before the age of 18 in California or are black or Hispanic, right? And experts at the National Institute of Justice also note that youth living in inner cities show a higher prevalence of post-traumatic stress disorder than soldiers in the wartime military. And we offer all those resources and hospitals and everything else for our vets. And I think we should, and we should do more than I don't think they do enough for vets. I'm not for war and all that, but if folks are going to go out there and risk their life for them, you shouldn't treat them the way you treat them. Pay them what they need to be paid, give them the health benefits they need to get, give them the resources they need to get, let them get their homes, their houses, and give them to them. I'm all down with that. But you also got to, but what I'm saying here is that what's going on in our community, these young folks are suffering just as high, a higher prevalence of it than what they suffer in wartime. So even before this current crisis, this pandemic of COVID-19, right, this current crisis, serious violence has continued to be a public health pandemic in California, particularly in underserved communities of color. Each year, California suffers nearly 2,000 homicides, over 70% of which are committed with a gun, and thousands more non-fatal shootings and stabbings that can leave victims with serious long-term medical issues. This violence burdens the healthcare system and imposes enormous human and economic costs every single year. And we don't need this year with people with COVID-19. Folks with that, they got to get to the hospital. I believe that's why a lot of people are dying from COVID-19. It's not that the virus is just killing them, wiping them out, period, but a lot of them are not getting the health care that they need. They're not able to, they're dying at home. They're dying, can't get to the hospital, or when by the time they get to the hospital, it's too late, right? And we don't need people with gunshot wounds, stab wounds, or been injured from violence, community violence, to be in there to take up those beds where we really want to address this pandemic. So Supervisor Nathan Fletcher, if you really want to address the pandemic and really want to do that, then you must address community violence. You must start speaking out about it, and you're going to have to be the champion in the community, because you claim that all these black people are behind you, then you need to do something about for the black community. I don't know if you're cutting them a check on the sides. Did you get a check?
No. See, here's the thing when you talk about getting a check, right? Because you know, just being in the same boat,
right?
So what happens is when it comes to people in these positions, right? I can't put myself in anybody else's head, but what I can do is just tell you what I've noticed over the years that we've been doing this. You've been doing a lot longer, so your word is very valid on the situation. What happens is they try to piecemeal stuff, right? So even the thing you're talking about that they have voted on, that they're trying to get voted on, trying to get pushed through, and even how it was presented to us when our name went on there as an organization, is that let's get this through because it starts to open up the doors, right? And so they try to piecemeal stuff. So as far as me trying to be optimistic and things like that, but what I found out is something that you always had said, right? We went through this with Myrtle Cole when she did the CAB board that myself and my partner Armand King sat on, and then it's pretty much a lot of lip service being done just to buy time, right? So what was most appealing to what the first thing they were trying to push was the mental health thing, right? Like I know I have family members dealing with that directly, and it was about
all around,
exactly, right? So that was the most appealing part to it, but it was still a lot of other stuff that made no sense, right? When you talk about creating a racial equity office or something like that, I mean, if it's another office with no teeth, no subpoena power, nothing like that, it's not going to do anything. So what they try to make it seem like is you have to go with other things that may not be working just to get something through and start the conversation, right? And so, but what happens is if that's the truth, then how come we don't start the conversation from there and then keep the conversation going?
Right.
So one thing I will say after that is that even though it went through as far as them pushing that, Nathan Fletcher has to make sure to keep the conversation going, right?
Right.
Now, now as far as funding, we'll be the first to say that when it comes to the county, they definitely have a lot more resources and funding that they can get. I mean, for the folks out there that have a nonprofit, you know how it works. When it comes to the county, what they have is what they call NRPs, and that's what is the standing for that one again?
But I know that's their out of their personal funding.
That
each county board of supervisors have so much money they can allocate to give out the way they want to.
Kind of like discretionary funding, right? So they have an NRP funding that you can go for. And they typically say it's anywhere about $5,000 to $15,000, right? So that's typically what they give out. So what are you going to do with that, right? I mean, what can a community really do if you're giving organizations anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 to heal? When everybody knows that when it comes to the theaters, right? Anything dealing with arts, the La Jolla Playhouse, they get millions of dollars, right? So when they make it seem as if you can only get $5,000 to $15,000. That's definitely not the case. You can definitely get more. So it's just kind of knowing how things go and knowing how things work. Now, us being on the side of being optimistic, if something seems that it may be somewhat better for the community than nothing, yes, we'll go for it. But at the same time, we also like to keep pressure on, and that's why I like where this conversation is going, because you have to keep pressure on. We like uncomfortable situations. We like it if we're in a situation where we start to feel little butterflies in our stomach. The person we're talking to, a politician, whoever it may be, they start to get a little butterflies in their stomach. This needs to be an uncomfortable situation so that the resources can come. Because to speak to what you were saying earlier, a lot of violence will be curtailed and minimized if we can start to fund the proper programs, the proper things. I know you were saying, like with the Summer Night Lights, right? We went all around the world trying to get funding for Summer Night Lights. And then what they'll do, they'll say, oh, you know what? Let the police do it, and then let the police do something similar. And then they take the ball, run with it, and it doesn't work. The reason they do that is so that they can say, oh, we tried and it didn't work. Well, you didn't try it the way that the community said that you should do it,
and then work with the community. Yeah,
and then work with the community to do it. So the number one thing, and I'll let you get back on, the number one thing I think is that if you bring money to the community and you give it to those folks on the ground level, you're talking about gang violence. I'm gonna speak about that directly because that's what I was mainly a part of. I know Pops was too.
No, if you whatever you want to talk about, bro.
If you give it just if you give it specifically as you know to the factors in the community, right? If you say, look, you know, you OGs, you got some pool, even some young YGs or BGs that got some pool and they got a little common sense. How about we pay these folks, right? We give them a stipend, 1099 them, W-2, whatever you got to do, and you pay them to help increase the peace out here, right? Most of the time, the youth that we mentor, the reason they're committing crimes is because they're broke and they want to get some money, right? It's economics, right? So if you can bring some resources and say, hey, look, spread the words to your people. We got this program, and we can pay you to do so.
And I like one of the things that I think you told me one time, because we was talking about that as far as like, and I was like, man, because you said, man, we got to get them jobs and stuff. And I was like, well, man, I offer some of these guys jobs, trying to talk to them. They like, they good. And you said, well, you're too late. They got a taste of them.
Yeah.
they got a taste of the other side. They're like, nah. And they straight up, they're in their nice little Lexus and everything. Man, I'm good, man.
we dealing with that right now. We got a program that we run now. We trying to give folks jobs, right? And it's federally funded and stuff like that. And we try to tell them, say, hey, look, we trying to help you get this job, but we notice our numbers with that have pulled back because everybody getting unemployment right now, right? Everybody using EDD.
They probably get more for that than anything else.
So they getting more. So what you're saying is absolutely right, man. And once you get a taste of the street money, right? You make $1,000 in one night or something like that, just to use a starting point. It's kind of hard to go back to making $100 in a day.
That's right.
So it's about mentoring them, and sometimes you got to wait till they bump their head to realize, I was making $500, $1,000 a day, but when I got locked up for those 2 years, if I average it out, I was probably making a minimum wage. So now I had to do 2 years not getting no money, right? So sometimes it takes for them to bump their head, get out, and then you can start to help them out again.
And I also found out, and I want to deal some numbers I put down here. But I also, one of the things that I found over the years in working with folks with this is a lot of times, like, they may not, no, I'm down for my set and I'm going to do this and they're going to make their money, they're going to do things. But I think there's still ways you can get them involved in positive activity rather than tell them what they can't do. Show them a few things that they can do. Okay, well, I'm not here to disrupt anything you're doing over here. I just want to help you over here. Don't you love your community? Yeah. Well, can't you do this? Whatever, like a cleanup day, whatever. Let's take some. I hate to use the word pride, but take some pride in your community. I'm just using that example. Let's get out and beautify the community. What about your park? Don't you? This is your park, right? Yeah. Let's fix it up. You know, and do some things. I'm just using that example. It could be anything, but you can redirect their energy in a positive way, and not even like make them think or get them to think that, hey, I'm trying to stop you from doing this. I'm not here to stop you do anything over here. I'm just trying to focus some of that time and energy that you have over here. One of the things that I want to say was,
and before you
go ahead.
Just to jump into that is that Mother Teresa, she said she doesn't want to be a part of any anti-war rallies. She'd rather be at a pro-peace rally, right? So instead of focusing on the negative, when it comes to anti-gang, anti-human sex trafficking, anti-violence, you need to be a part of a pro-job, pro-clean up the community, pro-this, pro-that, and then bring that to you. Say, look, I got some money for us to go do something positive, right? You'll be amazed the thing that these youth would do, even the ones you feel maybe the craziest, baddest. They didn't start off malice; they just grew that way, right? Because their environment. If you offer them some money to go do something positive, they'll do it, right? That's right. People just need the resources, as you started off with. The resources are here, and to speak to the county board of supervisors, Nathan Flex, and all that, you're absolutely right, right? They're giving community members, like our organizations, these little NRPs, and you may get 5, 10, 15,000, but that's not no real money. They have to give some real money, no strings attached, no reimbursements. Just here goes the money because you're doing the work, and provide the reports to us later. Something like that.
And how did you find out about, because I know we were talking a few months ago, because I was sharing, I said, man, that's all you're going to get is anywhere from a couple of thousand to the most they give you 15,000. You said, no, we found out that you can get way more than that.
Yeah, we found out you can get way more. That information sometimes is hidden. We've been hearing it for years. I've been in meetings with you over and over trying to get money for Summer Night Lights. We've been in meetings as Paving Great Futures, and you already said that number. And so what you have to do is there's like budget meetings and reports, so you have to look at those numbers. So right now you can join them through Zoom. You used to be able to do them in person. You can do it for the city. You can request it. So we just seen it online and go into these meetings, and then you'll see it, and you start to ask these questions like, well, why did this group get 100,000, and then you're saying we can only get 15,000, right? Wow. If the county has billions of dollars and things like that, and so you start to realize they have the money and they'll give it to who they want to. So if we're saying we have a solution, right? We have the numbers to prove it. Why are we not getting the money? Well, there's a reason we're not getting the money. It's set up that way.
Exactly.
Not to get the money. So
and their mindset is that way. They don't really realize it. They try to make it seem like people like County Board of Supervisor Nathan Flex. And the reason why I'm picking on him because he's supposed to be representing the black community as far as a supervisor. Blacks, of course, all over everywhere, but the mass majority of them is right in his area, in his community. And I what they call endorsed him, right? Yeah. And after that, really didn't hear nothing from him again until I spoke negative about him. The only time I hear from him when I speak negative about him. But I endorsed him, and he chased me down for that endorsement, right? And then when I endorsed him and he won, didn't hear nothing from him until I called him out on some stuff, and then that's when I heard from him or his wife. I like his Lorraine, in some instances, some of the things that she has done in the community, and some of the things she's doing up in in Sacramento, things like that. But because that's her husband, you know, they sometimes get bunched together because they protect each other.
And now there's one thing I can say when it comes to politicians. Since we've been in this, we realize a lot of times politicians tell you what you want to hear while you're running for office, but then you get in there and into something else. But one thing I can say is what we did recently when it comes to social equity in cannabis, which to us is a huge thing because they can bring a lot of money in. Nathan Fletcher, he stepped up to lead the charge on that. But since the county board of supervisors is with 4 other folks besides them, they're all, you know, what do you say, a little bit racist, right? Because why would you not want to give folks that's been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs a hand up? Right. So in that instance, he had led the charge on that, right? So I give him credit for that, but it didn't pass. So now what's the next step? So what I'm saying is I'm gonna be fair and I'll give certain politicians credit for starting something, but I discredit them because often they don't finish. So I'm waiting to see what Nathan Fletcher's office's next steps would be on social equity since that was shot down. Don't feel like, well, I tried, that's it. If you're really for the people, then let's keep pushing.
Have a long-term goal. Not just a short-term, but long-term and being for the overhaul. And here's what I'm saying in regards to this when it comes to Supervisor Nathan Fletcher is that I see him every day on Twitter about COVID-19, and rightly so. And so if you can use the bully pulpit to push a narrative on that, then you can be pushing for other things. And it's almost like you don't care about us, and this is the only thing that's on your agenda is this, and this is going to cause you to lose the next election if that's all you want to push. If it comes up to black and brown folks in our community that's tired of it, man, because I mean, you know, we want to be protected, we want to stay safe and all that with the COVID-19, and do your thing, but don't leave. But if that's the only thing that's important to you, and you're not pushing it, like you're not pushing what you was talking about, your bill, you're not pushing the community violence, you're not pushing trying to bring research, you're not calling out the county board supervisor like you're calling them out on COVID-19, then we don't have a champion. We don't have somebody there in the county board of supervisors to speak for us, a seat that is to speak for us. And I'm hoping we get more seats on there. But I'm telling you right now, you know, I feel like our communities are being left out and neglected.
Well, I'm gonna tell you like this. We run with I'm our brother's keeper. They take the lead where they support them and help them expand it to other places or the food distribution. Right now it's in 3 different locations throughout the week. Now, if you talk about COVID-19, that should be a #1 thing that they want to fund, and the county has not funded our COVID-19 food distributions like they should, right? So you get the food bank that will, you get other foundations that will, things like that, you know, right? The low hanging fruit. But when it comes to the county and the city, it's so much bureaucracy and red tape. It's like, why, if we're feeding thousands of people a week, why would you not step up and fund? Why not do that right now, right? You got 5K Hip Hop that's doing great work with the COVID-19. All these different groups, right? So why not fund those groups? We've put the word out there.
With emergency funding.
Yeah, what do we have to do? CARES Act came through to help out, so I totally agree with that.
And so absolutely. So and my thing is that, and I agree with you 100% on that. And I, like you said, foundations. There are foundations that'll reach out and help you. I give shout out to Hope and Heal Foundation, who we've been working with for a couple of years and stuff, and they help out, you know, with funding a little bit and things like that. So got to give a shout out to them for all what they're doing and everything. So these foundations, they do try to help and things, but like you say, you know, where our tax dollars are going to our county and to our city, and these government officials who claim that they care about us, we got to start holding them accountable, because, you know, when I saw all those names include, so I can't, just because he's my son, I can't leave him out, right? When I saw all those names on there, on that flyer, it was like, man, I love all y'all, you know, but this ain't good.
And that's why we love the uncomfortable situations. That's where growth comes from, right? So when you have to look at it as how we may look at things personally, because when I came about, I called you, I talked to you, I talked to our other, you know, it was like another partner on there.
Trying to find out what's going on, figure
out what's going on. Then you have to weigh the options, right, of what's best as a whole, despite how
so
you.
So it's a step in the right direction. Just hold his feet to the fire. That's all I'm saying. We got to hold his feet to the fire. You know, because y'all still. But and it seems like to me, and that's the problem that I have, and I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I'm left out a lot of stuff, because even with that, they didn't come to me and talk to me.
Yeah, and you're expert. You're expert on the ground. But what happens is sometimes if you know too much information and too much data, they don't want to bring it to the folks that know better, and that'll call them out sometimes, right? So what we are is like, you know, I'll call you, I'll see what's going on, we'll weigh the options, and then say, well, this is supposed to be a step in the right direction. Now we have something to hold your feet to the fire. Something that you said, and I know how you feel now. But you had once said, you have to try things out so they can't say you didn't try.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Because that's what they'll use against you. They'll say, hey, well, we were trying to do this, but you guys didn't want to support it, right? So if it's something that's has even an inkling of good for the community, we try to support it.
Let's do it.
Because they can't say we didn't try, but we also have now something to say, look, this is what you said you want to do. Now we can hold your feet to the fire. Let's get it done.
And even like when I was calling out County Board Supervisor Nathan Fletcher on this mental health issue with non-police officers, what they call it, officer responder, whatever they call it, and they're and folks are calling me and saying, hey, well, after this we can meet with Fletcher and blah blah. There ain't been no meeting. Nobody ain't met. Nobody ain't talking about nothing. He gone on back with his stuff.
You've been around the block long enough to see the play before it's going to happen. I think there was just another vote. I reached out to you, as I usually do before, because our partners over at Pillars of the Community had reached out to us and said, hey, look, man, you got the County Board of Supervisors. They're voting on a thing about trying to, I guess, give more funding or something to the police so they can do more, suppression.
Prop 20.
Yeah, and so we were trying to say no, but you knew that they were going to push it through because that's just how they are, right? Yeah. And so you caught it before it happened. Of course, it happened because that's how the County Board of Supervisors are. They support stuff like that, nothing that's going to uplift the community as far as the majority of them, right? So you already seen that coming down the pipeline because you've been doing it for so long. So with that being said, what is the next steps or the solution, since you kind of already know what they're going to do? Right. What is the answer? What is the solution?
Right.
You feel?
Right, exactly, and we get into that.
Okay.
So one of the things I want to say when you look at the community violence, it's not just a public safety issue, but it's also a public health issue, especially during this pandemic. And this is what we figured out in California as far as shooting. When a shooting happened, a single shooting costs $2.5 million in California. A single shooting costs $2.5 million in California, right? And you can look at Stockton as an example. They actually looked at the cost. If we ask our county, San Diego, to invest in like $5 million for 5 years, they would save $500 million over 5 years. $500 million versus $5 million, right? Now they say, oh, you don't have to come back. We have the big five. We're in good with one of the big fives that most definitely get our back on the funding and all that. They have no problem with working with us and doing that kind of stuff. So there's no excuse whatsoever when it comes to that, right? The county has an obligation and a responsibility to do this. I seen them sole source, and when I saw that, I said, man, they're giving away money like it ain't nothing. They sole source to, and I hate to call their name out because I don't hate them or anything, like NCRC, right? This a few years ago, they sole sourced to them. I think it was like $1 million some, right? Sole source, solely to them.
Now, if you can,
nobody's doing this work in San Diego that we're doing. Why can't they sole source it, right? I mean, what they'll do is they'll take what we're doing, like the Some Nights Like program or the violence disruption and things like that. They'll take what we're doing, and then what they'll do is they'll put a RFP out, right? Request for proposal, and people apply for it. Like, hey, y'all not doing the work. Sole source them, quit playing games, and sole source this stuff to us, And so that's what they can do. For the work that we do, we have a plan, and we've been editing and perfecting this plan over the years, right? We have a plan. We know what works. We know what's evidence-based. We know what's best practices. We know throughout the nation, the research, the studies have demonstrated and shown what has worked. We have it all. All we need is the resources to get this going and get it working, so they can sole source this stuff to us, right?
Yeah.
So
what I was going to say was, if you can explain what sole source means to your viewers too.
Yeah. My understanding of what sole sourcing is, because that's what happened to us when I with CAS, right? I'm with CAS still, but back a few years ago with CAS, we had a peacemaker contract, right? And we went through the Urban League. They were our fiscal agent, but what the county did was they sole sourced to them. What sole sourcing means is that because you came up with some innovative, you're doing something that nobody else is doing, they can give the money directly to you versus sending it up for competition through an RFP. They give it directly to you, and a sole sourcing. That's what they did with NCRC. They're probably doing a lot of other organizations with sole sourcing, right? But when it comes to big money, that was like 75,000, 100. I forget what it was when they sold it. That was a lot of money. But when you're talking about big money, they ain't doing it with us. But if they don't trust us, we don't have the capacity or whatever it is, we have bona fide organizations been around for years and years and years that got our back. We got everything we need except the money, right? So when you talk about sole sourcing, they're giving that money directly to an organization that's doing the work in San Diego and or doing that work and nobody else is doing that work.
Well, and one thing I can say just to add to that, right? So that's what source searching is, and we say it's either sole source or, like you said, RFP.
Mm-hmm.
And RFP is request for proposal. So when you do that, you may have 100 people going for that same bucket of money, even though you're the most qualified. It just depends who's reviewing those RFPs, those requests for proposals,
That's right.
And you may not even get it, right? But then the sole source, it comes directly to you because, like he said, you can do it. But here's still what I see as the problem, because we went for one of those grants before, and then and then we partnered with folks, and then we had got it. But what we still realized the problem was after getting it, because sometimes you don't get all the information until you actually get awarded the grant. Then you start to get more information, see how it's going to run. One thing that I realized is still not enough. I watched a U-All program, right, and the amount they gave y'all for the work you was doing, it still wasn't enough. You did it out of your passion for what you do, and just still did a lot of in-kind services. And what in-kind services mean, you're pretty much working for free because you're saying, hey, I'm going to still do what needs to be done out of my own energy, even though I'm not being compensated, but put it down as if it's actual capital. So they still don't give enough money even when you get sole source. So I wanted to say sole source, because they can do it, so do that. Sole source these are organizations that are innovative and also make it enough money, right? So just going 100,000, that's always the typical number, 100,000 or something. You can't pay staff. There's people, if you look at businesses, corporations, even larger nonprofits, I mean, just basic employees that, somewhat of a decent level, they're getting 100,000 just for their 1 year salary. So how do you want us to run a whole program off of $100,000? But then you're going to give millions to like La Jolla Playhouse or something that isn't stopping any violence.
That's right.
So it really doesn't make sense when you start to figure
and not
it out.
saving money.
Yeah.
Because when you disrupt violence, you're each shooting that you disrupt, you're saving this city or county $2.5 million, right? And that's been proven throughout the nation. They did a study in Baltimore and other different places that show and demonstrate when you have credible messages. Let me just tell you what credible. When you have credible messages out there disrupting the violence, it saves the city money. When credible messages are those who have turned their lives around, working on the front lines to interrupt gun violence and provide hope and opportunity to men and women caught in the crossfire. I'm a former gamer, my son is a former gamer. We've experienced the gun violence. So we know what needs to be done. We've been through the trauma and all of that, and so we can go through a lifeline to those. Only nobody else can do that. Only us, we can do it. Those that have been through that lifestyle can do that. People like myself, along with Paying Refuters, you got people like Stacey Butler, you got people, Butler, you got people like Stephon Wilson, you got a lot of Gray Cruz, you got a lot of people out there, and a lot of my homies that helped me, whether it is Charles Van and Lil Cass, Robert White, different people that helped me out too in this to disrupt the violence. You have DeAndre Brooks, you have DeAndre Cooper, you have a lot of different youngsters that's coming up, that's coming out of that lifestyle, that's still connected, and they want to see people. They can still talk to their homies and still do things to disrupt that violence, right? And so that's what we need to do. So when you look at urban or community violence, it is not inevitable, it is all preventable, right? So it's not something that's just got to happen, and we can bring peace. We can bring peace between these gangs. San Diego and other California communities have these trusted messengers, credible messengers, and we have the right strategy, and it's just a matter of providing the resources to be able to carry out the work. And that's what we call on these folks, because if you really want to see violence disrupt, you want to really see us get out there and work the streets and bring peace in the community where there's not a lot of shootings and different things like that, then let us work together, right? I'm trying to, because one of the things I realize, and I've told people this, throughout the years, even with my relationship that I have with PD, SDPD, because it had been severed, and being this like talk lately, chiefness like we talk lately, and so it look like we're mending our bridges to work to disrupt the violence in the community, right? Because we all have to work together. But my thing, there's work that only we can do, right? There's work that only we can do, but they have the technology, they have the resources to where we can make the connections to those streets. And anywhere where you look, the community has to come together to be able to do that. You need the politicians, you need law enforcement, you need the community, you need everybody. And so those that, and it's always, no matter when I've done this work, you always have those say, man, I don't want to have nothing to do with the police. That's fine, because you don't have to, but we most definitely going to have to deal with it, because if there's a shooting right now, we won't hear about it. We might hear about it the next day or something, or 2 days or a week later, and never hear about it unless somebody from the community calls us. But police is on the front line and they hear about it. And if we have that relationship where they can give us that information and do that, we could do it. Now the struggle has been, that's why a lot of people have dropped out of this work, is that, you know, a lot of times you can be seen working with the police, they see you ask the police, oh man, you're the police, you're the snitch, and all these kind of things. And you know, but if you really love your community, you really want to disrupt the violence, you know, you got to get past that. And I think we just got to do a lot more education for people to understand why we do what we do, right? You know, this is not about transferring information to back and forth to each other. It's about us getting the information that we need to get to the hospital, get to the streets, get to the homes, and get to places. Because that was one of the things I requested, like, hey, you know, if there's a shooting in my community, send me the name of the person that got shot at so I can reach out to them. You know what I mean? That's all I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you like this, because I've you know, sometimes you'll hear little whispers, little things that you may have certain folks out there that I'm gonna be honest as being haters by even mentioning anything about that. They'll never say it to your face. I've never had anybody say it to my face. I'm sure you never had nobody say it to your face. Just being that, you know, I'm not just the type of individual that you're going to kind of put that smut on my name when it's not the truth, right? Especially when it's not the truth. So this is what the actual situation is from what me seeing it and being in it, is that certain people may feel that way until they need your help, right? So
and
now,
I experienced that many times.
So now when they in there and they facing time, and I've had a lot of mentees, whether it's family members, whether it's little homies, whether whoever it may be. And they may need some help, right? And then you're able to, you know, write that letter from your organization and then possibly reach out, right, to certain folks that may be in law enforcement, whatever, and say, hey, look, can we instead put together a plan for this individual so they don't have to do all this time?
Right.
Or they've been working with our program, or this is what this person may be. And if that agency, whether it be the DA's office, PD, whatever it may be, can help that individual in their situation, then they're all for it.
Right.
So people don't see that part of it, that when you're actually helping save black lives by having a breach across the aisle, right? You're not saying, hey, I'm here working with you, giving you information, and I'm going along with everything you're doing. What you're saying is, I know you guys are controlling this system and have your thumb on all these black lives. So if I got to communicate with you and create a relationship to say, hey, look, you know what I mean? This individual isn't that bad of an individual. We can put together a game plan for him. Why don't you give him a chance? And if you can have that open dialogue and get some of your people freed, if we look at the prison system as how slavery was, right? We actually doing the work, right, of abolitionists, like how Rosa Parks trying to free our people. So you got to communicate across the aisle at times to get things done. Yeah, sorry, Harriet Tubman, not Rosa Parks, but Harriet Tubman. You got to reach across the aisle to get stuff done, right? So I mean that's kind of the way I see it. It's always going to be somebody hating, talking crap.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, I think you're going to have that, and it takes education. You got to really educate people to understand what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing and so forth. And you're going to always have that. And the bottom line, some people probably would never ever like trust you for whatever reason. But then there's those that's reasonable, right? There are those that I've seen it many times where people, like, I was shocked that they called me and wanted help. You know, because they got into it with the police or whatever, and now they wanted me to intervene, wanted my advice and things like that. And I'm like, wow, okay, you know, so just keep doing what you're doing, because, you know, sooner or later, you know, people gonna get it.
And it's it's interesting because from the outside looking in, it's hard to see, hard to know what's going on, right? So all you can do is kind of assume, right? When you're on the outside looking, but when you're on the inside, I can say I've been in several meetings with you, and you're gonna call PD out on their mess, right? Call the DA out on their mess, right? You be in meetings with us, we have no problem speaking our mind. We're sitting there and we'll be like, hey, this is what, like, we be in there fighting for the people. I mean, coming at these folks and telling them everything the community wants to tell them, but we're the ones there and we're on them. It's not like it's all peaches and creams and unicorns and rainbows. No, this is some real tough conversations that get uncomfortable with these folks that we're trying to fight for our people. So, you know, sometimes it's a slap in the face, a little disrespect when someone sees it another way. But like I said, that's always until they may need the help. But now behind the scenes, folks like yourself and many others are definitely fighting for our people and saying the things that the community will want to say to these folks.
Right. And I know that, you know, I'm a pastor, and I've been in this, been out of the streets for like going on 36 years, and so I you know, I see things a little bit different from everybody else. I should say most folks that are really not in church and things like that, you know, because the way I view it and the way I see it as a pastor is that you know, I kind of like what Frederick Douglass said. You know, I work with anybody to do right, and I'll unite with anybody to do right and nobody to do wrong, right? And so, you know, when you thinking about saving your community, I remember a young man I was talking to and there was a shooting, and I think I shared this before, and I walked up to him, and he saw me talking to the gang detective, because I was like, hey, what happened here, blah, blah. And by the way, one of my homeboys called me and told me there was a shooting, so that's why I went down there. But I'm talking to the gang detective to find out what happened in the community. He saw there's a shooting, guy went to the hospital, blah, 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 blah. So I saw one of the youngsters getting out of the car coming up, so he saw me talking to the gang detective. Yeah. And when I walked up, I said, hey, man, what happened, man? Yeah. And he knew me, I knew him. He looked at me, he looked down, he saw the police officer, he looked at me. He was like, I don't know, Bob, you kind of like the police. and then I had to explain to him, like what you just said. I said, man, how you think I'm going to help you? Yeah. How you think I'm going to make the connections to get to the community, help the individuals that got shot, get to the hospital, get them the resources that they need, and all those different things, you know. The only way I can do that, I have to have that information, and that's why I do this, because that's that connection. I'm doing this to help you. Right, I'm not doing this to help me or hurt somebody or anything like that. I'm doing this to help you. And he, you know, when he looked at it, he kind of shook his head like, oh, okay, you know, kind of get a better understanding of it, right? Yeah. And so, you know, and of course, I understand, like, when people know who you are, and especially, you know, these youngsters, when they know what you do, and they thinking about getting vengeance or whatever, they don't want you even coming. They don't want to see you because they know what you're going to have to say, right? Yeah. I don't want to hear all that, man. Ain't going to be no peace, and you know, it ain't, you know, and it's fine, but you're still having a conversation by you just talking like that. I'm sowing seeds, and you're thinking about it, right? Yeah, and I got you thinking about it.
That's true. I mean, and you hit the spot. I was talking to a mentee on the way up here, and he was talking about another mentee that's younger than him, and I was like, hey man, try to help me reach this individual. And he was like, man, he's a lost cause, you know, he ain't gonna listen to nothing you gotta say, man, you know that. And I said, look, man, I said it's not about if he listens to it now. I got a buddy that's in the other industry, I'm in the finance industry, and he always says it's like a bag of popcorn, right? But it's like popcorn kernels. You never know when they're gonna pop, right? They all pop at different times. So it's the same thing with planting the seed, like you just said. You never know when that kernel's gonna pop. It may be now.
That's right.
It may be later, but as long as we did our job by planting the seed, that's all that matters.
Amen. And so, you know, so the thing of it is that, you know, one of the things of the clear message that we're trying to get to everyone and get to you all is that, you know, we have community violence. When I talked to the chief, he told me that violence is up, right? And gun violence is up, right? And throughout the nation, violence is up, crime is up. A lot of people think it has to do with defunding and all that kind of stuff. It's really not. You know, violence don't take a vacation because there's a pandemic, right?
So can I add something there? When you say defunding, one thing that people always forget about, it's not just about police getting defunded, but what about all the organizations and boots on the ground that get defunded all the time?
All the time.
So in Chicago, they don't understand that. The rates of violence, like, you know, tremendously. But what happened to the public schools?
They took all the resources.
So,
that too. Yeah.
So the public schools got defunded. You had dozens of public schools that shut down. Kids no school to go to.
And they some people say it's not really gentrification, but what they do is they bunch them all together. So now you have these different gangs on the same street, the same community, and those, the drug thing. You know?
And those that do the work we do, they had a program out there. I forgot what it's called. But they would get out there and intervene with gang violence. You had OGs that was getting paid from the
credible
city,
messengers,
credible messengers to come out there and do the work. And they called their group something else, but they were credible messengers, right? And then they defunded them. So what do you think is going to happen?
Violence interrupters, I think, or something
like that. So what do you think? I think it was that. What do you think is going to happen once you take money away from stuff like that? Now people can still try to do it because they got passion, but you still got to pay the bills. So now 8 hours at work, you may get an hour or two to fix this. What if you have people that was paid full time around the clock that was, you know, OGs, YGs, BGs that can try to help stop this? So when they talk about
don't give them poverty wages either.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say earlier is that when I say they throw a little bit of money at you, like $100,000 to run a program, you'll kind of be like, well, what I got to pay these people minimum wage? Well, how am I gonna compete with all this other stuff out there? And why are you paying somebody because they may have a degree but know nothing about the community, the people they serving, $50 an hour, but then you want to give, you know, $12 to $15 an hour to somebody that's coming from the streets. But really, that person from the streets is well more qualified if you're trying to reach people from the streets than somebody with a degree. So I agree with that.
Right, and we have to make them respect us, and that's why I'm talking about the soul sourcing. But not only that, when you're competing with requests for proposals, they'll set it up in such a way. But I saw it with that one proposal that went out for the mentors with probation and things like that. Yeah. Is that
we can talk about that?
They tell you how much you pay for each person, this person with this degree and all these other different people. It's like, man, just let us do our thing, man.
And that's a grant that you're speaking about when you talk, and that's a grant when you talk about that people don't understand, especially with our organizations. It's not about money. We'll give money back. So even with that one, we had won that grant and we gave it back because once we started getting into it, we said, hold on, this is pretty much set up to fail. If you're handcuffing us and keeping us from doing the work we can that we're supposed to be doing. If we know how to do it,
right?
You brought us on to do the work. You know it works. Why are you trying to tell us to do it your way?
Right.
Because you obviously you don't want it to work, and you're not paying what should be being paid. So we even had to give that back because it isn't right. And that's the thing that I'm glad we're having this conversation. People behind the scenes got to know. All money isn't good money, and if you're a solid individual or organization and you see something ain't right, you got to give the money back. And that's what we did because we don't want to be handcuffed in doing this work that we're doing, right?
Right.
So,
absolutely. And so so we know what works, and we have the plan, and so I'm hoping and I'm believing and I'm hoping that our county will come around. I know Council Member Monica Montgomery, she's working on some things, but you got to really understand that with the city council, they don't have that type of funding coming through like the county does. The county, that's where the money goes for that type of work. But Monica, I shouldn't say Monica, excuse me, Council Member Monica Montgomery, she's really trying to work on getting credible messages set up and things like that. So we got to be conscious of that, aware of that, and watch out for that. She got a lot of stuff on her hands, so she got to take it little by little. So we got to be patient with her because she's one person down there, but she's fighting for her community each and every day. I believe in her, and I know that she's doing the right thing. And when I thought she wasn't, I was calling her out. We sat down and met and talked about it. She kept it professional, and she opened my eyes, and I see what she's trying to do. And so I have a lot of respect for her and the work that she's doing in the community. And I believe if we all come together and work together and get her back, what she's trying to do with the city through credible message, get more resources to her district, District 4, and I hope Vivian Marino with District 8, where I'm from, she jump in on this too. And whoever gets District number 9, they need to jump in it too and get on this. The mayor, whoever the next mayor is going to be, because we know Faulkner's not going to do anything. He's a lame duck mayor. And he's opposing Prop 20. I hope these pastors that support him, y'all need to call him out on this, unless you supporting Prop 22 that's going to tear down everything that we built up these past 6 years in criminal justice, or I shouldn't say criminal justice reform, but reforming the prison system and things like that. But we got to get on it. But Todd Gloria, Assembly Member Todd Gloria, Council Member Barbara Bree will be the next mayor. The Lord's will and the Lord should tarry. And I would like to hear from them what their plan is on community violence and how they're going to address this and end the cycle of violence. Do they care about our community and the violence that is taking place? Because all they want to do is put those shot spotters up, which is waste a lot of money. Shot spotters is not saving any money. Those guys, if they were going to do a shooting, whether they wouldn't care about the shot spotters, right? That's not deterring nothing, and so on. So they put all this surveillance equipment, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on all this type of stuff quickly, add more police quickly, all these different things. But then when it comes to the resources that we need to fight for our community, to keep our community safe and healthy, we don't get it. But then they say, why you got all that violence? Why you got all that crime? And why you got all these different things? Well, you sabotaged us. You set us up. When a person's in trauma, person trying to what they call it, poverty crime, trying to make money and different things like that, you're going to have those kind of things that happen, and you got to remember, most of our youth, most folks are impacted by trauma, and they being re-traumatized on a lot of stuff, and that creates more violence, that creates more hate, and a lot of different types of violence and hate going on in the community.
You know what? Just to add to that, when I realized how serious it is with the prison system, the justice, how they making all this money off of it, is because speaking of Monica, Councilmember Monica Montgomery, we love her too. She's doing great work. She's only one person down there trying to fight. She definitely has all of our support. Another initiative she's working on is the social equity in cannabis, right? And so we hoping that the new mayor, that comes on, whoever that is, backs that as well. The county shot it down, so we hoping that a few of those seats get taken up by some more progressive people that want to push it. But I say all this to say that when you talk about the surveillance, they spent $30 million on those smart lights, right? So if you can spend $30 million on smart lights, those are the street lights that can listen to you, watch you, all kind of stuff. how come we can't get a few million just to go against violence, right? They're not even doing that, right? So if you can, and then if you did 27 million to increase the police's budget, right, during all this time of them getting a lot of pushback, how come we can't get some money to help out our folks, right? So the resources are definitely there. They're not giving it to us. And so what I was saying is that with cannabis and social equity, and for them to not want to push a program like that through, that's going to bring in revenue to help our communities, but instead they want to keep it criminalized so that they can lock people up, that's proof that they're making way more money locking us up than they will giving us opportunity. So why would they want to fix a system that to them is already working? It's not broken in their eyes. They're reaping the benefits off of it. If they do all the things we're asking them to do, then the system wouldn't work for them like it was designed to do. So
right. And I'm wondering how the Prop 64, which deals with the cannabis, that law, how that's going to fall in line with if Prop 20 passed, which is going to undo Prop 47, which dealt with those 6 crimes, which some of them were drug crimes. And so, like Prop 47, you was able to reduce your felony misdemeanor, right?
Yeah, Prop 64.
It's under Prop 64. Okay. Well, that's better then. So hopefully, that keeps things. But I'm really concerned about this prop, and we'll probably have another podcast on Prop 20 and Prop 17. I think what is Prop 60? There's a few of them that we got to talk about.
Yeah, Prop 64. So what happens is the name of the game is because we sat on the committee that overseen like the Prop 47, right? Like trying to help out with that. And what happens is these props come out and programs come out and they're sabotaged from the beginning because they don't want it to work. So Prop 47 was intentionally set up not to work because they didn't get the community involved, as we kept saying. Get the community involved, fund the community organizations to get this done. They decided to do otherwise. So when it doesn't fail, now you can get something like Prop 20 that can pop up and be successful just for those reasons because they sabotage it.
Amen. So my thing is that the other piece that I want to talk about, and I know we don't have that much time left, is when we talk about ending the cycle of violence. I know like one of there's Reverend Jeffrey Brown I met in Chicago, and I think he's out of Boston. He's one of the ones that helped get the ceasefire going, but they're doing some work now and trying to bring some of that to San Diego, where he called Season of Peace, but I renamed it and called it No Shots Fired.
Okay.
Right? And my thing is my dream is in Southeast San Diego to begin there to see all these gangs, black gangs, Crips, Bloods, the whole bit, have a season of peace where there's no shots fired, and even one day be able to sit down and come to the table of peace and reconcile and put differences aside, where we can love each other and where we can stop the violence, really focus on the real enemy, right, which is white supremacy, systemic racism, structural racism. That's what's really getting us, because they don't really, I shouldn't say don't care, but they're not really focused on preventing crime from the perspective of us killing each other and things like that.
They're not being proactive.
They have all the technology, all the investments that they make is basically, not all of it, but most of it is in investigating. Is in after something has been done to catch the perpetrator, and they're good at that and doing that. So somebody's dead, now somebody's going to prison for the rest of their lives, right? And they're not doing anything to help prevent it. In fact, they might be throwing wood in the fire when it comes to keeping the peace. Because I've talked to people where police come and say, hey, yeah, I just saw some Bloods, I just saw some Crips down the street, y'all going down there? So they kind of like start stuff sometimes with that. But I like to see peace. How do you think we can do that and get that going?
Man, I think we started off on the right foot by saying if you bring the resources into the community and then you give it to those factors in these communities that got some pull, right? You can definitely curtail the violence, but let's be realistic, right? The chances of the same government that set this up giving us the resources we need to fix this is highly unlikely, right? So what we need to do to be self-sufficient, I believe, is that we have to find ways to generate our own income within organizations and within our community, and then once you can do that, we can give folks a hand up, right? So it's a whole vicious cycle.
Yeah.
We mentor youth in the middle schools, right? So the minute they're going to middle school, they're not learning about their black history, right? They're not learning that they come from a lineage of kings and queens. So they're already kind of like thinking that they're less than. Some of them have mental health issues and things that need to be dealt with. The school isn't doing that, right? So from an early age, they're already being groomed to not be successful when they go to jail.
Right. So
then they go to jail, and then now when they get out, they got a record. So now when you get a record, you can't go get a job. So if we can kind of create our own of programs that can be sustained without government assistance, is great. And then when folks get out, if we have our own economy going, we can then give folks a hand up by giving them jobs, and then that'll keep them out. And then thirdly, just funding the factors in the community, giving them some money so that their job can be to create peace. They be peacemakers. You
Absolutely.
get paid to do so.
Absolutely, and that's what worked in Richmond and Stockton and various other places
Yeah.
where they're doing. You got to reach those people, because the thing that people don't understand, I think people understand this, is that there's a very small percentage of people who are gang involved that are committing the violence, right?
Yeah, probably like 1%.
Yeah, it's I looked at it and I try to calculate it myself. It's very small. It could be anywhere from less than 1% up to 2%. It's very small when you look at those who are actually committing violence. So those folks can easily be reached, right? You can easily connect with these guys, easily start working out. All of them ain't going to want no help, right? But there's going to be many of them that do want help and do want out. I know, like, when I was banging, I wanted out, you know what I mean? If you'd have threw me some kind of hope or something, I probably would have ran for it, you know? But I found God. But I'm just telling you, when I was young, there was time where I'm tired of this, man. Especially back then, because banging was every day. It was a career, man. It was like every day you get up, you know, that was your job, is banging. You get tired of it every day, day in and day out, and stuff, So it ain't all together like that today, but if we can reach that small percentage of people and start working and do things like you talking about, and one thing that's for sure has proven to work is CBT, what they call CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, where you get individuals to look from within to make that change and let them look at the change that they need to make and do that. But you have to be able to draw them in, right, so that you can start working on them. And so, like we was talking about earlier, if these guys are making some good money, you're going to have to top that, right? You're going to have to at least give them something decent, help them to get housing, help them with their cars, help them if they need a job, and then give them something, like you're saying, to come to work with us and to reach out to the communities and so on.
You open my eyes, right, by saying $2.5 million, right, is what it costs for someone to get shot. So if you could just take, say, $50,000 and give some factors on the streets of salary, I'm just going to throw it out to say $50,000, something like that, right? Say, look, everything is data driven within the county and all of that. So if they can say, look, if you can help stop whether show qualitative effects or quantitative on how you were able to stop violence throughout the year, we need the data to be shown. You get somebody 50,000 in the hood, and they can say, hey, it was an altercation going on at the mall. You don't have to name folks and say, I was able to stop it, right? Document that. Just document all the things you're doing without incriminating nobody. You document it, and you got a report saying, look, because of my efforts, I probably stopped 10 shootings this year, and that saved y'all $25 million, and you giving me $50,000. Is that not worth paying folks? So there's a way to document it, get the data, and pay these folks on the ground level a livable wage to do their work. So I think that is the answer.
Exactly. So and so that that's, I mean, we making it sound simple, but there's a lot of work into this, from tracking data to working with the individuals, connecting with them and working with them, getting them to commit and all those type of things. But the work has got to begin, and we can most definitely do it. We most definitely can end this cycle of violence, And I know, like in our communities, like I see some of the things that Councilmember Monica Montgomery's doing is trying to address poverty, trying to bring more resources to the community and different things like that. We got a long way to go. I really believe, and this is just from my heartfelt thing, we really got to have reparations, Reparations is really
Shirley Weber just put something like that up in Sacramento.
They just going to do a study. Yeah, that's a start,
Okay.
But that means nothing if the United States government doesn't get on report. And I ain't just talking about, when you talk about reparations, these resources and different things just for black people, but I'm talking about money too. But we got to figure out a way to do reparations and fix. That's the way you're going to bring it up to a level at least where we can have something to build on, right? And otherwise, all we're doing is patching up holes. But that's all you give us. And
when reparations come, we got to have financial literacy, because otherwise, folks won't get their money and
that's right.
They say Jim Rohn, he said, if you took the 1%'s money that have most of the money in the world, and you divide it up amongst the other 99%, in no time at all, they'd be back in the 1% hands, right? And that's because financial literacy. So that's another piece. So it's going to be several steps, right? Within Paving Great Futures, we got 6 core competencies that we feel it takes to make a well-rounded individual wraparound services. That's entrepreneurship, right? Because we got to create our own economy. That's job training, because not everybody's going to want to be an entrepreneur, but at least they can get a job and create their own income. That's going to be life skills, because that's when you got to teach them all of those things about, a CBT, all these different things, right, to get them right in their life and help them create life skills. Community outreach, right, and community service, because you got to give back to the community. If you want something, you got to give it first, right? So we got to learn to start giving to our people as a community, and then also a civic engagement, right? And so a civic engagement, because you have to get involved in the community, right? And then the 6th one, financial literacy, because it's not how much you make, it's how much you can keep. Right, so you got to know how to keep your money. So we think all of that well-rounded creates a solid individual. And of course, there's other things there, mental health counseling, which we feel falls within life skills. But it's going to take all of this and all of us working together, and having candid, uncomfortable situations. And I love it, because I get it from my pops. Very straightforward. Whatever we talk about in these boardrooms or behind closed doors is the same thing that we can talk about in public, because it's the truth, and we do this for the public. We are the community. They say how we get our participants. We are our participants.
Right.
We are the hood. That's where we come from, and we'll never lose that for any amount of money, because I'd rather stop doing this work and just stay in my financial career than to sell out to do this work. That wasn't the reason we came into this. So
that's right. And so the other thing I said about reparations is like when it is a cash payout, but it's way deeper than that. When you're talking about American descendants of slavery, and when you look at that specifically, there should be things that's specifically for us, right? So like if we're trying to help a brother get his life together, say, okay, reparations came through, right? Okay, you can get a free education, brother.
Right.
You can get a loan, because you ADOS, you can get a loan, right, for entrepreneur business and
even
things like that.
Home, all that.
You can get a home. You're first in line for all these different things. And of course, they got to work it out. I'm not the expert on this and all that, but I'm just a layman, of my understanding of it. And but what I've read and the research and the study papers I've looked at, man, that's what's going to make the change.
0% down on a home like the VA gets.
Exactly. Exactly. So we just wanted to come in and touch on the community violence. We know violence is up, but and during this coronavirus, we know that those hospital beds want to keep reserved for those that need them. So we got to address violence to do that. Also, we got to remember that the credible messengers, they are the ones that can get out there and disrupt this violence, right? Not the police. It's the credible messenger. Now, police, they do play a role in sense of investigation, things like that, but that's a minimal role compared to what we can do. We can prevent them from ever falling in the hands of the police if we are able to have the resources to get out to do what we need to do to stop it, to stop the violence, prevent violence and intervene in violence when it happens, right? And I think by us doing that, we can end the cycle of violence. But we got to bring our county, we got to bring our city and our state, and to get more involved. Our state is trying to do. I think the state is trying to do more than what our county and our city is doing in regards to CalVIP and things like that. And I'm hoping, I'm looking forward to some of these foundations jumping on board and really helping us out too. And hopefully, we can have a plan. You can't just give us a 1 year, 2 year plan, or even a 3 year plan. We need like a 10-year plan, right? We need a 10-year plan of support to really make this thing work and change things and turn it upside down and around. I'm not going to be around that much longer, but I know you guys will. Next 20, 30 years, I'll be out of here. Hopefully, Lord, give me 30, 40 years. But if you don't, whenever my time is up, but the younger generation, you all, and those that's younger than you, we want to leave something for them to really disrupt this, where we can really focus on changing systems versus spending a lot of time trying to deal with ourselves with the violence and crime that's happening in our community.
Everything's a pilot program these days. We give you 2-3 years worth of money to see if it works out. We need, like you said, 10 years or more.
Yeah, exactly. So, anything else before we close out?
No, I think it was a great session. I think that I just want to leave everybody with this. The talk now is about, defunding the police, whether to defund the police or not to defund the police. Let's not forget that they are already defunding your community organizations, your community itself, right?
That's right.
We are already being defunded. I just got an email saying that the city CPPS and ACCF, which is city funding that comes to local nonprofits, that's going to be stopped, right? So they're not having that conversation.
Block grants?
Not CDBG.
Okay.
That got kept alive because of the CARES Act money that came.
Okay.
But CPPS is like what the city council.
Oh, yeah, the individual, yeah.
Exactly. So
they don't have none of that.
They're stopping it because of what's going on. So it's not just about the police are being defunded, but what about your community orgs that are being defunded right now at this very moment? While the police are not being defunded, they're being funded more because they just got $27 million, but now nonprofits get less. So let's keep that in mind.
Exactly. And Supervisor Nathan Fletcher, we need you to use your platform to speak on these things, man, because your community, they voted for you. I supported you and endorsed you, but it looked like you don't care about it.
Yeah. And if you want the answer and you need direction, you can always come sit down with your community leaders, invite us to the table and get the direction that is needed. But something has to happen immediately.
Right.
When things go wrong in other communities or whatever else, when you guys want to fund it, y'all do it right away. We need that same urgency and expediency in this situation.
All right, so that's it. Thank you for tuning in to Slow Motion with Bishop Bowser, Shaphat Outreach Podcast, and all those that are viewing on live stream Facebook. We thank you for coming on in. We started this live stream with Shaphat Outreach, hoping that you all will start liking our page, like it, and follow Shaphat Outreach. All right, God bless you.